Welcome to Fire Your Doctor, episode 15, with my wife, Dr. Danielle Lockwood.
And my husband, Richard Lockwood.
I'm realizing we didn't introduce ourselves on the last episode, but it's okay. We're sending it.
It's all right. So I'm Dr. Lockwood.
Cool.
This is Richard Lockwood. We're here. We're talking Fire Your Doctor, episode 15.
What are you telling us about today?
I'm so glad you asked. We're talking about the thyroid doesn't lie. The thyroid is one of the, I don't know if it's the main thing we see, but it's a pretty prominent thing that we see in our clinic just by the nature of we're trying to correct the hormonal systems.
Let me refine that definition.
Okay.
The thyroid is something that people come in with frequently as a chief complaint.
Yes. Good
Where it's
point.
like, my thyroid's off. And it's like, let's talk about estrogen dominance. And they're like, no, my thyroid. And it's like, that's what I said. Let's deal with this estrogen dominance. So I would say thyroid would be among our chief complaints that we get.
And so the subtitle, I like it. I think it's helpful. When your thyroid labs look normal, air quotes, but your body and soul say otherwise. Yeah.
Right.
I feel like I need to say amen to that. Amen.
Yeah. So that would be a clear picture, like kind of an avatar of a common patient type that we would see in clinic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I call it the thyroid is the canary in the coal mine. So if it's going off, your entire hormonal system is off. And your metabolic system is off, which we talked about in previous episodes, like your blood sugar, nutrients,
microbiome.
Your adrenals are typically off, so you're exhausted. You're exhausted in your fight or flight hormones, which is what your adrenals make. You're exhausted in your cells.
Yeah.
Your cells are exhausted.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on if you're talking
Let's define this. Okay, so for younger audiences, people that are just kind of disconnected, canary in the coal mine is a turn of phrase that is used back when people did a lot of coal mining and they didn't have industrial or kind of computerized sensors to measure for toxic gas.
Like carbon monoxide.
You would, as you're mining underground, you would take a little bird in a cage with you. Mm-hmm. And when the bird had trouble, you knew that you were in trouble before you knew you were in trouble.
Yep.
And so they would take this little canary, so a
little yellow bird.
A little bird that'd be like kind of a pet bird. Mm-hmm. And that bird would show symptoms or just die before you would. And then you're just like, hey man, canary don't look so hot. Let's get out of here before we too perish.
Yes.
So
it's like a fire alarm that's going off before you smell the smoke.
Yes. So a lot of conventional medical care would be like, we're underground in the coal mine in years gone by. The canary's having trouble, and we're like, hey man, we gotta work on this canary. Let's help this canary. And it's like, no. We don't need to help the canary. We need to figure out why that canary is having a bad time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so there's this way that people want to solve the fire alarm, to use another analogy, by just taking the batteries out. And it's like, no, let's figure out why it's alerting us.
Yes.
Cool.
So typically you'll go in to the doc, you're not feeling good. Maybe you're saying, I'm exhausted, I've got anxiety, gaining weight. We'll see this a lot of times after people have children. Hair loss.
Skin. Complexion.
Brain fog. Yes. Skin and complexion. Weight gain. Yes. All of it. You'll go in.
Cold.
Doctor's like, hey, you know what? I'll run some tests. And they do. And they're like, thyroid looks fine. Or they say, oh, your thyroid's a little off. Let me give you levothyroxine.
Well, let's take a second and define, because you mentioned your labs look fine, kind of in your, parody of primary care. How do they define fine in a lab?
Oh, yes. Let's really talk about this. Labs, what you're being compared to on your blood labs are the average person within a 500-mile radius of that lab.
That has gotten labs.
So, who typically goes in to get labs?
Sick people.
Mostly sick people. Mostly people who are trying to be monitored on a specific medication.
Or a health condition.
Or a health condition. So there's very few of like the biohackers going in and doing labs.
Okay.
I would say that's less than 1% of the population.
Okay, so let's put this on a bumper sticker. Labs are defined as normal if they fall in a range that the lab that's doing the testing commonly sees. But, and here's the bumper sticker, only sick people get labs done. Now, that's a slight oversimplification, but I would say, how about this? Sick people are more likely to get labs done.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're being compared to sick people. Let's pretend they weren't, quote, sick people. We talked about in our last episode how 28% of people over 40 are on statin medications.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so as we've discussed kind of in general over several episodes, the average American is already getting to be very likely unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. So if we compared ourselves to just the average American, that's everybody that's a marathon runner, an athlete, somebody with great whatever, down to somebody that is just so unhealthy that they're disabled. So that's the average American. Now, of those average Americans, there's a certain percentage that are like, I feel great. I don't really go to the doctor that often. They're probably not getting blood labs that often because whatever, I don't like needles. Why would I get tested? My insurance won't pay for a blood test unless something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just not going to get labs, right? So you're getting an unhealthy population base on average. And then we are selecting, let's say, the bottom 60 percentile of that population base is one that is unhealthy enough that they need to get or want to get labs. Yes, we have that 0.1% or that 1% of ultra healthy people that might get labs for, say, biohacking purposes, but that is so statistically insignificant that it's not really going to shift it. So we have an unhealthy total population base. The cameras are zooming in for no reason. I don't want them to do any of that. Okay, we're back. Okay, so
you
let's see.
with your hands.
So we have an unhealthy population base that is subselected for the unhealthiest people in that unhealthy population base. And then that is what the lab uses to compare your values to other people's values. So when we get lab results, they're very often done relative to a, quote, normal person in your demographic and in your geographic location.
Okay, let's summarize that in less than a sentence.
Okay.
Because that was a deep understanding of it, but we need to just let's wrap it up again.
I'm trying to. How about you try?
You're being compared to unhealthy people.
Yeah, you're being compared to unhealthy people.
These are not optimal levels.
Normal doesn't mean healthy.
Normal does not mean healthy.
Right. And so in America, normal means unhealthy, and then you're getting an unhealthy selection of unhealthy people.
Yep, you're getting the bottom of the barrel of the unhealthy. And they're saying,
barrels.
As long as you fit within those levels, you're not dying. You know, and that's the other thing to understand. If you're at 60 to 90% deficiency, by the time it's going to show up in one of those labs.
Okay, no, so that would be, so the first level is our entire population base is statistically unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
The second level is that only people that are noticeably less healthy than their kind of unhealthy counterparts would even get lab testing.
Mm-hmm.
The third level is that you have to be so unhealthy of that subset of the subset that the doctor would consider writing you a prescription for a medication.
Yep.
So there's 3 levels of unhealthy that you have to get to before conventional primary care would be likely to consider you as having a thyroid problem.
Yeah. So, and even if they get coerced into giving you that thyroid medication, they're only going to give you levothyroxine mostly, which is just T4. We're not going to get into the details of that, but most of the time, people don't react as well as they could. to it, and it's not really how bodies naturally work. So, and it's also not getting to why it's happening, right? The thyroid is part of what I've adapted from one of my mentors called the hormonal hierarchy. So it starts with blood sugar, it goes to the stress hormones, then the thyroid, then the sex hormones. So we'll see if somebody has problems with their sex hormones, if they have problems with anxiety, if they have problems with all these things, we need to make sure that thyroid is stabilized. That being said, what's really driving that dysfunction in the thyroid is most likely a combination of gut imbalance, toxicity, inflammation, immune confusion, and unhealed grief and disconnection, if I had to summarize it in one sentence.
Grief as in just general like stress,
Sadness.
anxiety, sadness, negative emotion.
Negative emotion.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
I mean, not great, but
So we can talk about the thyroid all we want, and we will, and that is the detail, but we need to also look at all those other factors: gut imbalance, toxicity, inflammation, immune confusion, and the emotional piece of it.
would you say that you could effectively treat the thyroid without dealing with this kind of host of other conditions?
No.
So in alternative healthcare, you will often hear the term root cause, to the point that I don't even like to use that word anymore, that term root cause anymore, because it's just like, it's kind of cliche. It's just like, it's become holistic. Oh, holistic. And it's just kind of meaningless. I think this would actually be a concrete example of an actual root cause. My thyroid is imbalanced because I don't have my stress under control, and my cortisol and all these things are off. And then that is cascading down, and I am feeling it in a thyroid imbalance.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Let's talk about what the conventional system does to address this thyroid. So let's say you do hit the parameters of what they think is a thyroid problem. For example, they're only going to test something called thyroid stimulating hormone. You will have all the symptoms of thyroid issues, but they don't test any other hormones. I mean, I guess if you're lucky, they'll test a free T4. When we run a thyroid panel, we're testing something like 9 or 10 different markers, because I want to see, is the thyroid hormone converting to the active form of the thyroid hormone? Is there an autoimmune process going on? Is the body so stressed that it's sequestering all your thyroid hormone, right? Unless you test for those things, you're not going to know. I mean, you might, because you're having the symptoms of it, but they're telling you you're fine. So anyway, what they traditionally do is if they see that you have a thyroid problem, they start supplementing you with a thyroid hormone replacement, usually called Synthroid or levothyroxine. Then they have you come and get your thyroid checked every 6 months to a year, and they adjust as needed, either up or down. TSH is high, they up your medication. TSH is low, they decrease your medication, and so on and so forth. They don't care if it's autoimmune. They don't care about the other cause of it. They just say, thyroid not working, hammer, nail, bam, thyroid medication. That's it. Up and up and up she goes. And that's it.
This is also somewhat tangentially, I would say, related to just our entire insurance model of healthcare, where it's like you're entrusting this huge $1 billion insurance company to manage your healthcare in a way via what they'll pay for, with your best interest in mind, where their interest would be, hey, let's save money, and also let's get you on medications, where your interest is, I want to live my best life. Mm-hmm. And those aren't perfectly aligned.
Absolutely not. And they're also not, there's no education, for the most part, there's exceptions to this, within the conventional system that even talk about what, they don't even really fully understand what the thyroid does. They don't understand how it's interconnected into a larger hormonal picture. They don't understand, for example, nutrition that's needed by the thyroid. So back to what we talked about yesterday, we could be eating tons of calories, but we're nutrient deficient. Here's a couple things you want to look for that you need to take. You need to have in your diet. You need to have selenium, which is a trace mineral. You don't need a ton of it, but you need a little bit of it. One common source of selenium is Brazil nuts. So just eating 1 to 2 Brazil nuts a day can give you your daily need for selenium. Iodine, there's a lot of controversy about iodine. We'll talk about that in a second. Iodized salt is not a good form of iodine. Okay. Zinc, B12, something called L-tyrosine, and vitamin A, beta carotene, magnesium, and just B vitamins in general. So if you don't have these things, you don't have enough of them. Now, what would be the reasons you don't have enough of them? Either you're not getting enough of them in your diet, or you have long-standing gut imbalances that are not allowing for the absorption of those things. Could those affect the thyroid? Absolutely.
Okay. I like that. I also would say that, talking about diet, I think would be one of the reasons that long-term, you're not a huge fan of the vegan health movement.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like,
etc.
Could people go on a Daniel cleanse for a week or two where it's plant-based and very low calorie? It's almost like a mimicked fast. And is there benefits to that? Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I like vegan food? Yeah, I do. Like, I love salads. I love lots of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the healthiest for our body.
Right. Over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. That being said, we got a quote. Very simple one. Resistance to thyroid hormones are associated with obesity, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and diabetes-related mortality. This was a quote from a 2019 research article, which was from the Journal of Diabetes Care. What do we care about that? Well, it speaks volumes about how important proper thyroid function is for metabolic health and the entire body. Just to hit that home in one sentence. It affects everything.
Well, I would say that it's almost like it's a reinforcement. So you can go into a vicious circle, because what you're saying is proper thyroid function is a defense against diabetes, but also diabetes and blood sugar dysregulation can also cause thyroid dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And so as your thyroid goes down, your metabolic health also goes down, which reinforces thyroid dysfunction.
The thyroid controls the following: body temperature, heart rate, muscle strength, cholesterol levels, menstrual cycles, breathing, body weight, and nervous system signaling.
So kind of everything.
Kind of important. It's like the thermostat for your HVAC system.
Sure.
It's going to control the environment in a lot of ways. But I don't know, between all of those things, you're not going to feel very good if this thing's not working.
Right.
Not to mention, buried inside your thyroid is your parathyroid, which controls your calcium levels. So it actually somewhat influences how bone is restored in the body too.
Okay. So just to recap, the way that lab results are collected and compared is fundamentally flawed because it skews towards an unhealthy patient base. Number two, the number and the types of lab tests that are frequently done by primary care physicians are insufficient to get an adequate picture of what's really going on hormonally with your patient.
Correct. If it's just in the thyroid, let's say that your labs have only affected the thyroid, but there is no antibodies present, meaning there's no immune cells that are somewhat attacking its own organ. It's a hormonal issue. If we start to see antibodies present, it now becomes a hormonal and an immune issue. So there's usually an indicator. That's usually an indicator to me that there's some sort of underlying toxicity or infection going on in the body. So again, hormones and the thyroid, they're just so interconnected to each other that you can't separate it. So in order to actually reverse a process of the thyroid failing, either going hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, so overactive or underactive, requires investigation and requires a full understanding of how everything is interrelated.
Yeah, and then you said hypo and hyper. I would also just kind of throw out a little like breadcrumb for euthyroid sick.
Yes.
Where
basically your body has become so stressed either because of an illness or a psychological event or a physical trauma that the body basically goes into what looks like hypothyroid, but really is just trying to survive and slow you down to heal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Where your numbers aren't as like clinically off, but things are already showing signs of reaching breaking point.
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
yes. So again, most doctors, even when they see autoimmune, well, you've got autoimmune thyroid. So if it's hyperthyroid, they classify it as something called Graves' disease, meaning overactive. If it's underactive, they classify it as something called Hashimoto's. But in order to get that diagnosis, you have to have elevated antibodies. Okay. Now, does them having Graves' disease or Hashimoto's disease change the treatment modality? Well, technically, yes. If it's hyperthyroid, you're going to take a drug that's for hyperthyroidism. And if you're hypothyroid, you're going to take a drug to supplement and give you more thyroid medication. They can flip-flop back and forth because eventually in Graves' or in Hashimoto's, the thyroid gland itself is destroyed to a point where you can have signs of both.
Yeah. That changes in the patient over time, like based on the just progression of the condition. I think something else that's, as we're reviewing, kind of talking about these labs and this kind of process, when we were first like kind of developing some of these programs, one of the things that I was like, said, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. It just came to my mind was, I think we're going to out Western medicine. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about, you were saying, well, hey, they're just kind of testing for TSH, maybe like free T4, but we're going to go above and beyond and test for all these other hormones and different kinds of things that are related to thyroid function and dysfunction. And from just basically more data. So it's like we're out sciencing the science people. I think sometimes in alternative healthcare, there's this kind of aspect of woo-woo where it's like things that might not be readily accepted by mainstream science. And there's definitely a bit of that in the practice. However, we're also using just proven research to treat the thyroid more scientifically and at a deeper understanding, using even the tools of Western medicine better than Western medicine's using them.
We also have, I can say for myself, I have a deep appreciation and understanding of biochemistry and biophysiology. If you don't know that, if you don't actually understand on a cellular level how these things work as best as we can with the research that we have, because that's, we learn new things all the time. If you don't really understand that, it's like my nurse, she just sent me an episode today and I'm like, yeah, we got to know this. It's like, we need to revisit how protein is assimilated into the body.
What I'm saying is that you are out sciencing the trust of the science crowd.
100%. And I'll hear some of the things they say and I'm like, that isn't scientific at all. It actually takes more faith for me to buy into what you think about this than it does for me to out-science this.
Right. Well, and I guess that actually, I was thinking it was a few weeks ago, we were talking about that, how it's like, I think that the human experience does need faith, but we need to just be very, very careful about what we're having faith in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things in kind of deeper Christianity is that I'm going to have faith in God and I'm going to put no faith in man. Mm-hmm. Whereas now we're kind of spiritually moving to the other side where I have no faith in God, but somehow humanity is going to save us.
Yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
We'll see.
God is steady. He's a firm foundation. His word never changes or perishes, right? man is flighty. It changes with the trends. And we talked about in the 80s, it was no cholesterol, anything. And we're going to do vegetable oil. And this is going to be awesome.
Into no sugar.
Into no sugar. Into this, into that. It's like, no.
Yeah. Actually,
No.
Speaking of foundations, here's the segue. Let's talk about nutrient foundations for thyroid health.
I love that. We did talk about it already. Selenium, iodine, zinc, B12, tyrosine, vitamin A, magnesium. We did talk about that already. But can we
Great.
back up actually over here?
Ooh.
Antibodies and autoimmune thyroid. So
Yeah.
hypothyroid versus hyperthyroid. Okay, my thyroid's a wreck. What's actually happening? I got a quote for you. Richard Lockwood, would you like to read it?
I think I'm going
Starts
to.
here. It will talk about the interplay between insulin, cortisol, and your thyroid.
No, I'm just saying that like to is a strong word. I want to. It's like, I think I'm going to read it.
Yes.
No. Insulin resistance means that your cells are starving while at the same time your blood sugar is getting dangerously high. So, how do cortisol and insulin resistance harm the thyroid? When cortisol becomes too high for too long, it blocks the hypothalamus in the brain from telling your pituitary gland to produce TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Cortisol also signals the body to stop converting inactive thyroid hormone T4 into the active, usable form of thyroid hormone called T3. We cannot resolve thyroid issues without first getting control of cortisol and insulin resistance. All of these factors are well understood in medical science, yet very little of this deep knowledge is actually put into practice in the normal thyroid treatment. Well, there you go.
Amen.
We are out-sciencing the trust the science crowd.
Yes, sir.
Rest
yes.
my case.
You rest your case. It's case closed right there.
Yeah.
I want to reiterate something about the antibodies really quick. Okay, so if you have thyroid antibodies, the two antibodies that you should be testing for, there's actually three, but the most common ones that I will test for are thyroid peroxidase.
Inhibitor?
No, it's
No.
O. What does the O stand for? It's TPO antibody.
Oh, it'd just probably be
Oh my
oxidase.
Gosh, maybe oxidase, yeah.
Yeah.
So TPO and thyroglobulin antibody. Okay, so these are made by different parts of the thyroid gland. There's also one called TSI, which we'll sometimes use if we see somebody is going into Graves' disease. Either way, the existence of antibodies, by the way, do you want your thyroid destroying itself at any level? No, you don't. My ideal levels for these antibodies are, no, I think it's thyroid peroxidase.
Yeah, that's just, there's no O.
There's
after.
no
It's just
O. Okay, thank you.
Peroxy.
Peroxidase, but they've divided into TPO just to make it annoying. Okay. Yeah, oxidase. Yeah, thyroid peroxidase. Do you want those antibodies to be high? No, you do not. So anything over a level of 1 is considered elevated. It's considered present. It's considered early stage autoimmune. For example, they don't consider TPO to be high until it's over, I think, 15 or 20 on the labs. They don't consider TG high until it's over like 115. Like, no, why are we waiting until it's so high that it's hard to reverse? So anything over 1 in my book is the presence of autoimmune, which helps me to understand that this is an immune issue as well. Could it be a reactivated Epstein-Barr infection? Could be. Could it be mold inhibiting your immune system from recognizing something's in the system? Yes, it could. Could it be parasites in the gut? Yes, it could. Could it just be blatant overgrowth of something in the gut? Absolutely. So there's a lot of different things that can cause this. It's identifying what that is, cleaning out the system and repairing and taking the pressure off the immune system so that the inflammation starts going down in the thyroid.
Let's go back to faith for just 1 second.
Okay.
The entire concept of autoimmune could be a statement of faith that this happened because. And like, you'd be mocked if you were like, this happened in my life because God, or because I prayed. And yet we go over to our doctor and the doctor just said, this thing just happened because autoimmune.
Yep.
And it's like,
just started attacking itself.
Meaning that autoimmune is like a final answer. So like saying, oh, why was there lightning today? Because of Zeus. Oh, okay. Oh, it was Zeus. Why do I have antibodies on this? Oh, because autoimmune. Mm-hmm. And I find this to be scientifically lazy, meaning that sure, you might have an observation of lightning. That doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, because Zeus, the end. It means I have lightning because there's atmospheric conditions that cause static electricity to build up on this grand scale. And now all of a sudden, like you get like whatever, millions of volts discharging. In the case of an autoimmune thyroid, what are those conditions that led to that autoimmune observation happening? Like just randomly, just because, oh, autoimmune. Oh, that's all I needed to know.
Well, and then sometimes you'll hear like genetics.
Genetics and autoimmune.
They just, genetics, autoimmune, they just kind of throw it out.
The end. Okay, we got Zeus. Like through a lightning bolt. It's autoimmune. And
weird. But it also...
It's lazy.
Well, and it's also lazy medicine.
That's what I mean.
Because it's like, oh, well, okay, it's autoimmune. Shouldn't I be treating the inflammatory component of that? Or isn't there a reason it's autoimmune? Why is my body just attacking itself? Bodies don't attack itself for no reason. I think because we are wonderfully made, which we'll learn about in our quote today, right? We're wonderfully made. I just have this belief that there's a reason that it got mucked up. There's something interfering for it. It's not some
beyond a belief
called autoimmune or genetics.
Well, I would say even beyond a belief, because I wouldn't put like, hey, I believe that there is a reason why this autoimmune conditioning is happening. I would say that the evidence of your clinical practice has fleshed that out. Mm-hmm. That like when we can't find the reason, I could say, well, I can't find the reason why this autoimmune condition is happening, so there is no reason. Now, that's an assumption, and that's also a statement of faith. If I don't see it, it's not there. Okay, great. No, reality, I don't see it, so I need to learn more. I need to look more. I need to think more. I need to observe. I need to do science. And so we're in this kind of way where science has become, and particularly medical science, has become extremely prideful. If I don't know the reason isn't there. Autoimmune, the end, and you just shut your brain off.
Yeah. Thyroid medication for the rest of your life, increasing the dose, too bad. It's eventually going to destroy itself. We'll have to remove it anyway. And then what's the solution to that? Medication.
More drugs. Okay. So what are some of these? Just shoot from the hip. Give us some examples of some of these other underlying conditions that are tied to thyroid. I mean, you mentioned kind of mold and toxicities.
Mold, parasites, toxicities, heavy metals, glyphosate, pesticides, all of those can contribute. Those really just tax the immune system, I would say. So those are like what we would call an obstacle to reverse the symptoms, right?
Okay.
I would also say back in the toxin category, there are specific toxins, specifically they're called halides. Okay, so now we got to go a little chemistry nerd on you. Okay, so in your periodic table of contents, all the way over to the right, there's this column called halides. What's in that category? Okay, something like chloride. They end in "ide." This is your hint. Okay, the only one that's odd from that whole column. So chloride, fluoride, bromide, iodide. Right?
That would be a form. Yeah.
Okay. So those are all halides. Okay. Now, what are the two most common things used by the body? One, chloride. Chloride is needed for the transports of salts in the body. It creates acid balances in our, metabolic waste products. It's used for a lot of different things. Could you be overchlorided? Yes, you could, because it will mess with oxygen balances. Okay. I won't get into that. My point on this is iodide, aka iodine, is used by the thyroid gland. Okay. So when we're using words like levothyroxine and liothyronine, we're actually talking about something called T4, which is a hormone in the body. T4 would be levothyroxine. T3 would be the active form of the thyroid hormone T3. Okay. The drug is called liothyronine for that one. Okay. What's the point? The difference between T4 and T3 is an iodine molecule. Okay, so all the hormones in the thyroid are made of iodine molecules. Okay, what else is iodine used for? It's used for the turnover of breast tissue in females specifically. I mean, in males, but I would say more in females. It's used for the ovaries and the uterus, so for egg turnover. Okay, it's used as a cofactor to bring hormones into the liver. This is iodine. It's also used as a cofactor to regulate heart rhythm. Is iodine important?
Sure.
I'd say yes.
So
now,
let's talk about forms of iodine, though.
Forms of iodine, really cool, but I want to finish this.
Okay, then go.
All the things that, if you know the periodic table, you know that iodine can easily be displaced by something that has a stronger electron pull, okay? What are those things? Fluoride, chlorine, okay? Bromide. Now, not a big deal as long as you're not being heavily exposed to those things all the time and you have enough iodine available to help counteract that. The problem is the iodized salt movement helped us to not get goiters, which are really large enlargements in our thyroid gland, but they didn't necessarily help us avoid all these other thyroid issues as well. So one other factor that's been going on for at least the last couple of decades is that we are extremely iodine deficient. And we have had our natural iodine that we might be getting from foods being displaced by bromides. Where do we find bromides? Well, we find it in refined flours. Anything that says bleached flour is used. It's a brominated chlorine that's used to bleach out the flour. It's found in flame retardants. So all of the kids' pajamas, new furniture were being brominated all over the place, which is displacing the amount of iodine readily available to be used by these various body parts.
When you're talking about your list of iod chemicals or like elements, I was actually thinking about formaldehyde for a second. But yeah, which would be something that's used to treat a lot of woods and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we need to detox that out. That needs to be taken out of the body. That is a part of the detoxification process that we take people through once we have some of these, what we call drainage pathways, opened. You can't just start detoxing somebody like that. You have to allow their gut to be open, their kidneys to be open. It's a whole process. Okay, so I'm not just saying, hey, go out there and like buy iodine and start taking it. That is not a good idea.
Yeah, we see this show up a little bit in the enriched flour movement that, oh no, processed flours, maybe grains that are grown in industrial farms, heavily using a lot of fertilizers and different things. We found that those might have less nutrition than other foods. So there's a movement by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, et cetera, to require enrichment of those foods with vitamins that are starting to be lacking in the population base. The problem is that when we have kind of industrial produced vitamins and minerals, those might not be as high of a quality as ones that you would source from eating natural whole foods, and that those low quality minerals and vitamins compete with, and in many cases outcompete, the natural form.
Yep.
So it's like low quality B vitamins from highly processed cracker crunchers are going to outcompete B vitamins from
meat, greens,
deep greens, and stuff like that I might eat.
Yeah.
In a similar way, some of these bromides, lower quality iodines, different forms of these
halogens
and halides are going to outcompete the natural kind of better forms of iodine that I might want.
Yeah. And there's definitely food sources of iodine. Off the top of my head, shrimp is really good in iodine. And seaweed, sea products
Sure.
are really good at iodine.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're like, okay, now I'm worried about mercury.
Totally,
Now I'm this,
totally.
now I'm that. And so
Totally.
there's a bit of a give and take with this. And unfortunately, this is kind of getting into a later chapter on toxic world
Yes.
and just environmental factors. So even if I'm living a healthy lifestyle, choosing whole foods, trying to exercise regularly, doing all those things, is my blanket organic? Oh no, it has a flame retardant on it that's required by law. Now all of a sudden it's showing up 5 years later or 10 years later in this thyroid dysregulation.
Yep.
Well, that's cool.
So I'm going to just give you a couple of resources because I wouldn't say that this like iodine disorder thing is my highest level of expertise. I use it. I understand it. We use a combination iodine in the practice that is from an old doctor back in the 1800s. It's called Lugol's iodine. And you want to get it because it has all the forms of iodine. So for example, the liver likes a form of iodine, but the breast tissue likes a different form of iodine. The Lugol's has 3 different types of iodine in there that address all the areas of what a body would need. But it has to be dosed appropriately. You don't want to overdose on iodine. You can cause your thyroid to go pretty wonky that way. And so it should be done under the supervision of a doctor or somebody who's very familiar with doing that. So 2 good resources for you. A wonderful book called Overcoming Thyroid Disorders, and that's David Brownstein. He also has an excellent website. He's been on a ton of podcasts. He's been in this for a really long time. He's an MD. And then there's another great book called The Iodine Crisis, and it's by somebody called Lynn Farrow. She's actually a patient who suffered not only from thyroid issues, but sort of this vague autoimmune kind of disease that she went to many doctors for who couldn't help her. And she finally started digging really deep in some of these toxins that we're talking about. So those are both good resources. We'll list them in the show notes.
Cool.
So we've rounded the bend. It was a pretty good one, thyroid. We're going to read a quote. Your ears will hear a word behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Whenever you turn to the right or to the left, when it feels like no one is listening, your body and your creator still are. Sometimes the whispers of fatigue, weight changes, or mental fog are divine nudges, reminding you to turn back to wisdom, alignment, and trust in what was fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's Isaiah 30:21, and that's the NASB version. I just thought that was so good. So good.
Yeah.
These are nudges. They're nudges to tell you that not only are you physically out of alignment, but you might be spiritually out of alignment too. And it's always an invitation to get back where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. There's kind of this weird way that we're at once worshiping our own humanity and elevating ourselves to this godlike level, but we're also just kind of deeply aware of our own flaws and looking at humans as this forever cursed kind of just creature worthy of hatred. And why do we even exist? And I think that this concept of I am fearfully and wonderfully made is a deep understanding that we have to have if we're going to truly be healthy. And this is a deep, deep spiritual understanding that I was created good.
Yes.
My body was created good. I don't think God made mistakes with me.
Yes. Amen. Amen.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode. Have a beautiful, wonderful, and blessed day.
Thanks, I will.
Bye.
Bye. I feel like I'm talking to them.